Hello netizens, and welcome back to my channel. Now I'm sure that many of you that grew up with mobile games as their only source of video games like I did will remember the fun that came with Angry Birds. A series of slingshot games where you fling birds at structures containing evil pigs that want to steal the birds' eggs. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Stella, everyone knows what Angry Birds is, so why are you explaining it? Simple. Because of the newer players getting involved in Angry Birds, some may not know about the older games since they have been delisted. Now with that out on the way, let's talk about my thoughts on Angry Birds Bounce, the newest game in the franchise. On to Chapter 1. So before I talk about my thoughts on this game, I must explain how this game works. Basically, imagine Breakout on Atari squished down to phone and tablet size, add Angry Birds stuff to it and add it to a subscription service. That is what Angry Birds Bounce boils down to in my opinion. Anyways, now we must address the elephant in the room. That being, this game is glitchy. Let me explain. After I played the game for the first time, I went back to it a few days later to play it again and it got frozen at the loading screen. It seemed like it was trying to load something, but it just kept hanging. Finally, I deleted then reinstalled the game. Only then did it load, although I did lose all my progress. Sounds pretty crappy, doesn't it? Well, I went to get footage for this video today and it's doing the exact same thing it did last time. It's extremely annoying and I really hope they fix this soon, assuming this is not an error on my end. So here I go again, deleting and reinstalling TE game, so much fun, not. Alrightly, with the game deleted and reinstalled, I officially welcome you to Angry Birds Bounce. Now as you can probably tell through the intro here, the story is basically oh no. The pigs are ruining our islands and we gotta play Breakout to get them back. It's a rather simple story that gets the job done. But what about the gameplay? Well, admittedly, the gameplay isn't an exact Breakout clone, but I'd be lying if I said the gameplay didn't at least remind me of Breakout. Anyways, as you can see, the main gameplay loop is centered around defeating pigs by slamming birds into them and unlocking charms, which are essentially temporary power-ups. Also, you might have noticed that when you start playing an isle you only have one bird, and in order to get more birds you have to fill up the meter on the top of your screen. When it's fully filled, you can choose between two random birds of the birds you have unlocked. One extremely annoying thing about this game is that every time you go to another isle, the game resets all the birds you got in the previous isle. Another thing or things you can unlock in this are talents which just slowly make your bird stronger permanently. Honestly, it's really not that bad of a game. My problem with it is the glitches. Somehow, as you will see, I suddenly can't enter Isle 3 to unlock Sliver. Why? Because there's no button to press so that you can actually play the isle. Also, while I was editing this video I went back to the game to check if it was fixed and it locked up again, and for those reasons I simply cannot recommend this game until all the glitches are fixed, and even then, I'd still prefer the classic slingshot games to much of the newer ones including this one. Oh, and before I forget, I just want to quickly mention that each champion bird has an ultimate ability. Champion birds are just the ones that lead your flock and are the ones you start with after you beat an isle. The ultimate abilities are just neat ways of causing high damage to pigs. The best way to understand it is basically the final smash from Smash Bros. Ultimate but Angry Birds. That's it. There is also different types of pigs to defeat, like for example, shield pigs that use shields to defend themselves. There's also hard hat pigs, medic pigs, and so on. But in case you can't tell, I'm struggling to find interesting things to say about this game because how repetitive it is. Now some of you may argue that the original Angry Birds was somewhat repetitive as well, and I won't deny that. However, this particular game is a very unique case because of how boring it is. It makes the glitches somehow slightly more entertaining to talk about than the gameplay, because you can have an actual discussion about the glitches while the actual gameplay is just there, if you know what I mean. Anyways, bored ramblings aside, I think it's about time to talk about the boss fights. So as for the boss fights, they mostly follow a repetitive pattern of the following. First, the boss spawns a wave of pigs and every time you defeat all on the spawned pigs, the boss spawns more. Second, because of the fact that defeating the boss defeats all the pigs, it's best to focus on the boss and to make sure that the pigs at least do not reach your slingshot. Lastly, because until you defeat the boss, you keep all your charms and birds from the previous levels. This means you are at your strongest when reaching the boss. I'd still recommend gradually upgrading your birds and talents over time as they get more and more powerful the further you get in the game. Now all of this is fine and dandy, but it still doesn't make the game-breaking glitches any more tolerable. But for now, I think I've talked enough about the gameplay. So, let's move on to our next chapter. As for the reviews, pause to read. I was surprised to find that the majority of which were mostly positive. Although many of do mention the glitches I've been talking about, it seems like they are fixing them, which is good. Another thing I noticed that the reviewers were talking about was high battery drain. Not to mention the heat that some people's devices were experiencing, but thankfully, apparently all of these glitches have been fixed in the last 24 hours while editing this video. So, you know what? Why don't we go back to the game and see if it's fixed? 3, 2, 1. Will it work? Nice, it loads. But unfortunately, it was mostly downhill from here, as although I was 100% hooked up to Wi-Fi, the game kept saying I was offline, and despite multiple attempts to retry, it kept on repeating the scene where you turn bomb into a champion. But because I couldn't do that, I went to play the sliver level and was blocked out. Finally, I tried to play offline even though I was online. Pause to look. After a bit, I got frustrated and left, showing us that although it loads in now, it's still pretty glitchy. Anyways, this video has been droning on for long enough, so let's move on to the third chapter, my final thoughts on this game. As for my final thoughts, I really do think that if they just iron out the glitches, Angry Birds Bounce can and should be a fun game. However, I am reviewing this game as it is right now, and I can say for sure that I was caustically optimistic for this game and was severely saddened to realize that my hesitations about this game were true, as the gameplay was repetitive and boring. And the glitches that should have been well ironed out by the time the game released unalived the hope I had for this game. But thankfully, things seem to be getting better, as they have been providing bug fixes early on, which is a good sign. Ultimately, I think time will tell if the game improves and Angry Birds Bounce manages to grow and become a more fleshed out game. As for me, I think I'm gonna stick with the slingshot games until that day arrives. Anyways, I think it's time to move on to our final chapter of this video, Chapter 4. So, in conclusion, Angry Birds Bounce is a fun game that is, as of right now anyway, being weighed down by glitches that severely break the game and is best suited as a repetitive, glitchy 5-minute time waster for now. And with that, we have officially reached the end of this video. If you enjoyed, why not subscribe and hit the bell? And don't forget to smash that like button for more gaming, Roblox, and review videos just like this. Check out my socials in the description. See you later, netizens. Wanna see more? I gotcha? Check out one of these videos and I will see ya there.